Greetings, everyone. I'm Stuart Binder-Macleod, and I have the honor of serving on the Board of Trustees of the Foundation for Physical Therapy. I'm also the chair of the Research Committee, and it also is my honor and privilege to welcome everyone today to our second scientific webinar presentation. I just want to say that if you missed our last presentation, which was excellent, please visit our website, foundation4pt.org, to watch. In addition, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We're going to be recording this meeting today, so it'll be available on our website as well. This webinar was made possible by a very generous gift and support by the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy, or ACAP. We certainly appreciate their support, and if you get a chance to speak to anyone from ACAP, please thank them for their support of this presentation. I also want to say that the Foundation for Physical Therapy Research believes that diversity and inclusion is an essential component to driving our mission, and that any individual with the skills, knowledge, and resources necessary to carry out the proposed research is welcome to apply to the Foundation. We encourage anyone to develop an application, and if you have any problems or questions, please feel free to contact us. We're really here to help. The goal of today's webinar is basically to provide tips on how to become a successful grant applicant. During this webinar, please be sure to add any questions or comments to the chat. We'll answer them as time allows, and if any of the questions we don't get to, we'll get back to you on that. Now I'm happy to introduce our moderator, my good friend, Laura Schmitt. Laura is an associate professor in the Division of Physical Therapy at Ohio State University. She also currently leads our scientific review committee and received her first funding from the Foundation. Laura, I kind of remember that, but that was a pretty long time ago. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Dr. Binder-Macleod. So you may have aged me just a little bit, but yes, you are right. My first funding was as a PhD student, so a PODS application. And now I work with my own PhD students and have been involved with the Scientific Review Committee for a number of years and am now the chair. So let's talk a little bit about the funding cycle and process. So once your grant is submitted, it undergoes administrative review and screening, and all eligible grants are assigned for review by the Scientific Review Committee. The Scientific Review Committee is appointed by the Board of Trustees and is comprised of physical therapists and clinician scientists with expertise in preparing trainees for research careers and with a broad range of clinical and research expertise across all areas of PT practice and research. The Scientific Review Committee discusses and scores applications based on their training potential for training grants and on scientific merit for all grants. Scores are then forwarded on to the Research Committee for review and finally on to the Board of Trustees. It is the Board of Trustees who makes all funding decisions with considerations of scientific merit, significance, and the research agenda of the Foundation. Now I think we're going to talk a little bit about the scoring criteria. Well, maybe I'll just say that this process allows the Foundation to support the best research. It also helps us prepare researchers and trainees to successfully secure future follow-on funding from other agencies, such as the National Institutes of Health. The Foundation has modeled this process after the NIH peer review process to achieve just that. To date, the Foundation has awarded more than $20 million in research funding, and Foundation-funded researchers have secured an additional $875 million in follow-on funding. So the Foundation really considers these funding awards to be an investment, and this is especially true of our grants, which often open doors for researchers trying to gain traction for a larger research project. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Saurabh Mehta from the Marshall University. Dr. Mehta was awarded a $40,000 2019 VCU Marquette Challenge Research Grant. The project, titled A Pilot Randomized Control Trial to Assess the Implementation and Outcomes of the GLAD Program in West Virginians Suffering from Osteoarthritis of the Knee, is examining the feasibility, acceptability, and preliminary outcomes of an evidence-based program that was actually developed by physical therapists in Denmark of people with osteoarthritis in the knee. So welcome, Dr. Mehta. Could you just tell us a little bit more about your research project and background?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Schmitt. First of all, I'd start with thanking the foundation for funding our project. As Dr. Schmitt mentioned, we are looking at whether a GLAD program is feasible, can be implemented, and whether it has a promise to provide superior outcomes in patients with osteoarthritis of the knee here in West Virginia. So the GLAD it's an acronym. It stands for Good Life with Arthritis in Denmark, and it was developed by Eva Roos and Skau Sørensen, who are physical therapists. And the intent of this program is to provide a disease-specific education to the patients with osteoarthritis of the knee, and also put them through a 6 weeks group-based but highly individualized one-on-one neuromuscular-based knee exercises, essentially teaching them the exercises so they can continue these exercises at home. Over the last decade, since the GLAD was conceived in Denmark, it has spread across many parts of the world, in Canada, in Australia, in many countries in Europe, as well as in China. And so much so that in countries like Canada and in Denmark specifically, it has become a public healthcare initiative where most patients who have osteoarthritis of the knee and they're not yet candidates for joint replacement surgery, they're actually sent through a GLAD. They're sent to GLAD program, and they've trained many number of physical therapists across Canada. So the idea is to bring it here in the United States because there is no study yet that has really assessed the implementation of GLAD in the United States. And we want to start with West Virginia, and hopefully, as Dr. Schmitt mentioned, that eventually would like to spread out and try and do a larger multi-site, multi-state trial. And our goal is to see the feasibility aspect of GLAD in West Virginia, because the GLAD was developed in Denmark. The exercises and the trainings were designed, and that worked well in Denmark. We just don't know it would work well in West Virginia. Our demographic is very different from Denmark. So we just want to make sure that it can be implemented with adequate feasibility and fidelity in our population. And on the side, we also want to see some preliminary effect of GLAD and how it occurs in West Virginia. So we're looking forward to it now.
Yes, terrific. Thank you. So your project has a lot of components to it. It's multidisciplinary. It's a randomized control trial. It has this international component to it as well. So could you talk a little bit about how you got your team together? What worked really well for you? Maybe what were some of your struggles? Could you talk a little bit about that and the importance of that in moving the application forward?
Sure. I could not have envisioned a better team that we have been able to put together. As I mentioned, GLAD is new to the United States. There is no local or contextual knowledge of GLAD within the United States. So we felt the need to collaborate with individuals who have implemented GLAD. And so there was a local team that we needed to put together, and there was an international team, local team that would help with process implementation, training a physical therapist to deliver GLAD, because, mind you, GLAD, before you can deliver the GLAD program, you need to be certified to deliver the GLAD. So we needed a local physical therapist who would do that. So we partnered with the local healthcare system. We are academic institution which has a medical school and a very thriving orthopedic surgery department. So we were able to collaborate with them. So the local collaboration is really to propel our project once we get started. And international collaboration, we have two collaborations. One is from Canada and one is in Denmark. The Canadian collaborator is actually the one who implemented GLAD in Canada. And we sought out that expertise so that we can learn from her about the unique challenges and opportunities in implementing GLAD in Canada, which is beyond Denmark, beyond where it was originally conceived. And we brought on Dr. Sorensen and Roos, who are actually the developers of GLAD, and they were very gracious to be part of us, and we therefore can always access their knowledge and expertise on that. And our Canadian collaboration also allowed us to have our training, our physical therapist here, to go to Canada, and that all happened before COVID started. So I and him, we went to Toronto, we participated in a 2-day workshop, and we both got credentialed to, deliver GLAD. So we are ready to go now, with having all that team and having all that training under our belt.
So you're making several important points there, which I just want to reiterate, which is all the work and team building and consideration that goes into before you've even submitted the application, right? You're talking about, things from a local environment and, a mentorship environment, those that have implemented this program in other countries, and how you're demonstrating communication between all members of the team. So I think that's a really important point. That was in that response, which is all the work and consideration you did for all parts of your project prior to even getting the application in. So congratulations on that. And speaking of the application, could you talk a little bit about any obstacles that you had in preparing your application, maybe those that were unexpectedly challenging or ones that took you more time than anticipated?
So as I recall back the time where I was preparing the application, like any other grant application, you start the process and everything seems a little overwhelming with all the different documents that you need to provide, and all the deadlines that you need to meet, and you have your mental framework and timeline as to how you would do this. So there are some smaller challenges that I encountered in terms of keeping everybody on track, and especially getting documents from team members. We needed, of course, the IRB approval before we could submit. So, getting that from international partner was a little bit of I needed a little head start there. But I think the application, especially the foundation portal, is extremely straightforward. Especially after you get through this initial process of figuring out all the documents and requirements. You can actually upload, as you finish each document, you can upload and save, so where you're at in the application process. It exactly shows you what's left and what's been completed. So it's much easier once you get started. It's just the logistic part of getting the team together, getting documents from them, and of course, having that international team, it's kind of a little challenging to get started.
Yes, well, congratulations on that. Yes, and your team leadership skills certainly are, put to the task when you are leading a grant, particularly one such as this. What were some of the resources you mentioned? The foundation website, and as Dr. Binder-Macleod had mentioned earlier, the foundation is really here for questions that you have as an applicant have or may have had. What are some of the other resources that you have found to be most helpful in submitting this grant?
I found that the instructions provided for, as I mentioned, there are several documents you have to prepare and submit. Instructions provided there on the foundation website are fairly straightforward. If I took time and really read them and understood them, it's not very difficult to follow. But at the same time, I must say that the support staff of the foundation has been absolutely fantastic. You email them about any questions that you may have, on a certain document, and you have those nervous moments because you're preparing and you hope for a quick answer, a quick turnaround, and that's actually what happened. Liz Jackson, Jordan have been absolutely fantastic in getting you the timely response. So I never felt that I was stuck trying to figure out on things on my own, and I always had that help from foundation. And they were extremely supportive.
Terrific. And I second you on that. They are wonderful, not just for you, but also for us on the Scientific Review Committee. So yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mehta. This was very helpful information. And if you would stay with us for a while, we're going to have some questions after our next guest. And I think you may have some insightful responses to the questions from our audience too. So thank you very much and congratulations again.
Sure. Thank you very much.
And next, we'll move on to our next speaker, Dr. Eric Vidoni. He is a PT PhD, the director of the Outreach, Recruitment, and Education Core for the University of Kansas Alzheimer's Disease Center and a research associate professor in the Department of Neurology at the University of Kansas Medical Center. Dr. Vidoni has received 2 awards from the foundation, a 2009 New Investigator Fellowship Training Initiative, so the NIFTY Award, and a 2013 Magistro Family Foundation research grant titled The Promotion of Activity Through Clinical Education and Reinforcement. Welcome, Dr. Vidoni. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Schmitt.
So maybe you could also start by telling us a little bit about your research project and your background.
So good timing. We actually just got a notice of award. My colleague Amanda Zabel-Reed and I just got our notice of award on our first R01.
Wow.
Congratulations. Thanks. So the idea is to test the public health recommendations for exercise and how they impact cognition and brain health in older adults. So.
Wonderful. So that is great news. And that's exactly what we were talking about earlier when we talked about follow-on funding and having really modeling our process similar to that being used by some, other federal foundation agencies. So that's just terrific. Could you talk a little bit about your experience with applying and receiving foundation funding, how those resources, what did you draw on to help you as you developed your foundation application, and then maybe if you could talk a little bit about how that led into your R01 application as well.
Sure. So it's been a while on the NIFTY, so I'm trying to recall. I actually turned that in the day before I defended my dissertation, so it was sort of a blur. But I think the NIFTY was really important for me from a perspective of just trying to write and just learning how to organize my ideas, or not organize my ideas maybe. And that was a really important process. And then getting the NIFTY was really critical for giving me stability and kind of proving to my mentor that I had the potential to get external funding and push a project through. And actually, I was thinking back on this, the NIFTY isn't that closely related to what we're doing now, but the Magistro is. And actually, the Magistro was my first kind of clinical trial that I wrote. And we actually have used the data. It was a resistance training study, and we used the data from the Magistro in our R01 application recently. So it took a little while, but ultimately it really set us up to have a very competitive application at the NIH level.
Terrific. And speaking of the 2013 award, the Magistro research grant, how did you find that application process to be? Was it similar to the process that you went through specifically maybe to the NIH for the current R01 or others that you've applied for? It's a little bit hard for me to think back on that. Every funding agency is a little bit different. And I think one of the things that's nice about going to different places and doing foundation or doing NIH or any of the other, administration for community living, different places like this, is that you have to really hone your story and think about who your audience is and how you want to convey that information. And so, there were parts of the process that are the same between foundation and NIH, but I think there are parts of the process that are different, and you're telling a slightly different audience why this is important. And keeping your audience in mind, I think, is a really critical piece of what I'm slowly learning over time as I write grants. I think you're making a great point, Dr. Vidoni. Those, NIH and other study sections are really made of a broad area of expertise, whereas the Scientific Review Committee is really, physical therapists and clinician scientists. So that is a bit of a different audience. By the same token, even though on the scientific review committee, even though we're all physical therapists and clinician scientists, we have a very broad range of expertise and knowledge in different areas. So I think you're making a good point about selling your message to the audience who you're going through. Great. Could you draw any, well, you also talked about some connections between the foundation funded research and your current research, that being particularly with preliminary data and pilot data. Are there any other connections between the two that you found, that really helped with the follow-on funding and your success?
Yeah, not that I can think of offhand, although, I think one of the things that's so valuable about grants like that the foundation provides, for example, are my co-director or my director here at the center, Dr. Swerdlow, often describes philanthropy and foundation funds as really seed dollars, as you guys just talked about, a 43-fold return on investment for the foundation, but they give you an opportunity to spread your wings a little bit, try something maybe a little more innovative. And I think that really has a tremendous ability to advance science. Some things that might not be received as well because there's not as much preliminary data or something like that at the NIH level. I think oftentimes foundations are a little more open to, and I think that's true of what we were doing with the Magistro, which was trying to look and see if there were any functional imaging changes in response to resistance training, and I would have never got that through, I don't think, at the NIH level.
Great. I think you're bringing up some good points there. So not just sort of like the hard science, the results and the preliminary data itself, but also you talked there, and Dr. Mehta also mentioned some of the other skills like grants administration skills and teamwork skills and building your team and really selling yourself as the principal investigator from those aspects too. And finally, I'll just ask one more question of you. Aside from those things that we've talked about, is there anything else that you want to mention to the audience, how the foundation funding has helped you in your research career? You kind of brushed off the cobwebs back to your nifty there and really said that kind of really helped you, kind of show some of these skills that you have and develop them further. Are there other ways that foundation funding has helped your career?
I think, yeah, it comes down to stability and practice. It's another opportunity to get your ideas vetted and see what the feedback is from an excellent panel of reviewers. And that's, in the end, it's just about putting in grants and putting in grants and putting in grants and putting in grants, and eventually you'll hit.
So it's a marathon per Dr. Vidoni. Good. I think you have a lot of others who will agree with you there. Great. Well, thank you very much. And if you wouldn't mind staying on, I think we're now going to bring Dr. Mehta back to join us for some Q&A. Terrific. Thank you. Welcome back. Well, you both have had really nice insights, both into the current work that you're doing and the previous work and how it's, sort of jump-started your research career and research trajectory. So thank you for sharing those with us. I'm going to start us off. Those of you in the audience, please feel free to chime in with some questions, but I'll just get us started while we're waiting for the audience to enter some questions. The first one I'll start off with is, what advice would you give a PhD student or early career, so a postdoctoral fellow or junior faculty, on applying for a research grant? Dr. Vidoni, do you want to start us off maybe with that one? I've been thinking about this a lot with my postdocs and graduate students, and the number one thing I would do is make sure you find some people you trust and then share your ideas. Don't keep them isolated. Don't keep them siloed. Better science comes from collaboration and sharing, I think. And I think PhD students sometimes are a little uncertain. We're still learning. They're still learning. So that would be my first piece of advice. Great. Dr. Mehta, do you have anything to add on to that, particularly go ahead.
Yeah, I think I exactly agree with Dr. Vidoni. By the way, Dr. Vidoni, congratulations for your R01. That's a fantastic achievement. So I'm just thinking back to when I was a PhD student and how I moved further. I agree that, at that time you may have so many ideas, and you might want to narrow down and try to really see what you want to hone in on. So it's very important you bounce those ideas off somebody who is your formal mentor, or you might see as a mentor, and they would really help you to kind of hone down on a very narrow path, which is very important to really discipline your thought process at that time, because I guess you want to change the world at that time, and that may not happen right away. So
terrific. Thank you. Well, we'll go to our second question here while others are entering some things in. So this one is, what are some primary things that make grant applications stand out? So I can take this one as on behalf of the Scientific Review Committee. And I think the first word I'll use is potential. And we've hit on it here with our few guests, which is the potential of the applicant or the candidate as a productive researcher. And as a productive trainee, and for follow-on funding, and great example of that today, as well as looking at the environment and the institutional support and the commitment to that trainee, whether it be a PhD trainee, a postdoctoral fellow, or a faculty member, as well as the scientific merit of the research plan. So we are really focused on, and those are our key areas as well that are focused in other external funding bodies as well. The last question we have here, and we'll see if we have time for some other ones. So we have this one coming in. Effective ways. What are some of the effective ways to delineate your research topic as unique and timely, rather than something that's very niche and that's unique only to you? That's reaching a broader a group. So Dr. Mehta, could you start us off here? You're in the unique position of taking a research topic that was actually developed somewhere else and then trying to apply it in a population that's a little bit different than the population it was developed for. Could you talk a little bit about this question?
Sure. I agree with you that when I actually started thinking about bringing a GLAD program and first even trying it out in West Virginia, obviously we're all new to it. Nobody had really heard it. So I needed to make sure that I really understand, a big picture view, and over a long term, is it really going to help population? Is it really going to advance the science? And is it going to advance, a practice for physical therapy? Those were the main questions I had. And as long as the answer is affirmative to, most of these questions, then your question would definitely be appealing, even though people may not have really thought about it or heard about it, or they may not have perceived it as unique, as long as you can prove that it is really going to advance the science of physical therapy. And that is my take. And that's what I thought in my project, that it was actually, it has a great potential to advance the science of physical therapy and advance the science of conservative management of osteoarthritis of knee.
Great. Dr. Vidoni, do you have anything to add to that about effective ways to delineate your research topic, considering that you just, you started off with, the 2013 grant and now were awarded the NIH grant? Is there any clinical or any pearls that you have for delineating your research topic as, being timely? Certainly you've been looking at this since, moving it forward over time. Do you have any pearls to add here?
Not really, not much to add to Dr. Mehta, other than, I think this is all wrapped up in that sharing, where the more you share, the more you get feedback, the more clarity comes to your application. And then with that clarity comes other diverse ideas about the impact of your application. And I think, honestly, they're sort of all wrapped up into one in some certain way.
Great, thank you. I know we are coming up on time here. So we have been writing down questions. If we do not get to your question, we do have, these questions documented, and we can reach back out or be able to address some of those. So would we like to answer a couple more questions, or are we ready to wrap up?
I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah, I just wasn't sure.
Perfect. Okay. I will just answer one more that I think has been coming through the chat, and that is about the expertise needed to support an application. So I think this, there we go. Oh, here we go. Here's one. How much demonstrated scholarship or experience is generally needed to support the rationale that you have the expertise to carry out the proposed study? Could you speak to this, please, Dr. Vidoni? How much, if you were thinking back, what are the, how did you demonstrate your expertise that you were ready to carry on things? And maybe you can speak to this both as from your NIFTY and your Magistro grant.
Okay. So yeah, with the NIFTY, I was just really starting out. I obviously had some experience doing my PhD with Dr. Lar Boyd, but I didn't have a ton of experience in what I had proposed to do. So I made sure it was really clear that I had people around me on my team, as Dr. Mehta has talked about the building of the team, that could help me in areas that I needed to learn in. I do think it's important to, if you don't have a lot of experience, demonstrate how you're going to get that, or what steps you're already taking to get some kind of experience in research. I would think that would be pretty hard if you have none. And you don't have a plan for how you're going to get that. But that's just my take. If I was on the review committee, I'd be concerned about that.
Yeah, and one of the words that I mentioned was the word potential, and that sort of gets at what you're saying, which is, what have you done and what's the potential? How does that kind of set you off on where you'll go further? Dr. Mehta, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I agree with what Dr. Vidoni said. As I see the grant application project, and even a research project that you might carry out, I don't think that it's ever expected that you know all parts of everything that you want to do in research, and that brings an importance of the team member, which are supplementing your, or you're adding to the unique thing that they bring on the table. As far as our own research expertise is concerned, as long as you can, tie in what you've done in past, not so much maybe in quantity, but the quality of work that you've done, what you're proposing and where you want to go with it, as long as you can draw a linear trajectory in all that, I think you would stand out, in my opinion. And obviously, you bringing your external partners to boost up your grant application, those unique aspects that are required to conduct that project.
Great, thank you. And I'll just ask one more question, just briefly, because I know we're running up on time here. But Dr. Mehta, maybe you could start us off with, how did you determine which grant to apply for at the foundation? There's many different funding avenues. How did you determine which grant to apply for?
So I think as we go through the foundation website, it's very clear that they have many opportunities for many different types of projects. There are grants that are dedicated to geriatric field of geriatric physical therapy. There are grants that are dedicated to orthopedic physical therapy. I chose the foundation grant or Marquette Challenge grant because the mandate is to advance the science and practice of physical therapy. And I think that my project is precisely aiming to do that. It is to really advance the scope and a reach as physical therapists in the United States. And I think that the other mandate is that they provide the money for a feasibility trial so that you can conduct that trial and make you successful a larger NIH trial. So those mandates were in line with what I was hoping to do, and I was able to demonstrate that on paper, which was again very easy to demonstrate because it all aligned at the end, and it really helped me.
Terrific. Dr. Vidoni, do you have anything to add on to that?
No, not really. Other than I think I just talked to Karen Chesborough. I just spent time talking to the foundation program officer about what was best.
Yep. So as we said before, the foundation is here ready to help. Wonderful staff, quick and responsive. So if you have a question about, which application, funding might be the best for you, certainly reach out. I'm happy to help assist you in that decision making. So thank you very much, Dr. Vidoni and Dr. Mehta. This has been very helpful, sharing your experiences. Wishing you luck on your current and upcoming projects. So congratulations again on the R01. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you, both of you. And now we will bring back Dr. Binder-Macleod to wrap things up for us.
That was, first of all, I'd have to thank once again ACAP for their support for this webinar. Also, I think our moderator and speakers did an outstanding job. Thank you so, so much. I just also want to say, I also have to thank the supporters for the foundation and those of you in the audience. We appreciate your support. If you'd like to make a gift to the foundation right now on your mobile phone, just text FPTR to 414-44 to help fund physical therapy research. I think you could appreciate we have so many great applications and certainly never enough resources to support all those great applications. I also want to ask everyone, remind everyone to please take the survey that appears in your email. This will help us better meet your needs in seeking research funding. And finally, if you had a question that either you didn't have time to put into the chat or perhaps even was in the chat, don't worry, you can email us at info@foundation4pt.org with any questions. I think as mentioned many times during the this webinar, we are happy to help. Well, thank you all once again, and this concludes this wonderful webinar. Thank you.